This is the Daily Lives group presenting our three pieces of works: the Athenian Agora, the Colosseum, and the Trajan Market. Enjoy.
The Agora was a marketplace as well as a civic center. It was a place to buy and sell things as well as a place to meet people and discuss all kinds of topics. Things from business to politics to bigger topics like the divine and the nature of the universe. It was a gathering place for citizens as well as a place for people to hear philosophers and politicians. Politicians' speeches would be timed using a water clock. The southwest part of the Agora was mainly political buildings like the Tholos and the Bouleuterion. The Agora is one of the best places today to learn about the Greek people due to its many functions in the Greek society, like how it was a place where you could see democracy come to life with political buildings such as the Tholos and the Bouleuterion. Next is the Bouleuterion. The Bouleuterion was a meeting place for the Senate. The Senate was roughly 500 members in size, and they could all be found inside the Bouleuterion discussing political matters. The Senate was made of 50 representatives from the 10 tribes created by Clisthenes. Each of these members would only serve for 1 year before the next election. The Bouleuterion is a large rectangular building with a propylon in the Ionic style at its entrance. The seats, which were wooden benches, were arranged like an amphitheater in a semicircle inside of the Bouleuterion. The Tholos was a circular building with a conical roof. The roof was made of terracotta and held up by 6 interior columns. The Tholos in Athens was 60 feet in diameter. The Tholos would be occupied by a 50-man executive committee consisting of members from the Senate any time the Senate was in session. Anytime, at least one-third of these members would be living inside of the Tholos in order to deal with any unexpected issues. These members would work in shifts and would cycle so that all members would have equal time throughout the year. There was a small kitchen at the north side of the building, as well as other accommodations for the council members who would be living inside it.
The Stoa of Adalos was a great work of Greek architecture that was built between the years of 159 and 138 BCE. This stoa, unlike many of the other stoas in the Athenian Agora, was funded by King Adalos II of Pergamon as a thank you for all of his time studying in Greek Athens during his youth. He gave to the Agora a 2-story covered walkway used by the people that housed the epicenter of commerce for the citizens of Athens. It was a central place where people could go shopping for nearly anything that they may have needed, whether it be food, clothes, oils, or any of the other common Greek goods. Let's take a closer look at the Athenian Agora. When a person entered the Stoa, they would be greeted by Doric-style columns that would actually start 6 feet above the ground. They rested upon an unfluted cylindrical marble, so that those that touched the column would not wear down or chip at the fluting over time. The Doric column's spacious frieze allowed for natural light to flood the hallways of the Stoa. This was not the only light source, however, because many of the other stores on the floors were lighted by small windows on their back wall. After walking in, the next set of columns they would see were the Ionic-style colonnades. Beyond those would have been the 21 stores on the western side of the hall, and if you were to go up the staircase on either the north or the south end, you would have been greeted by the other 21 stores on the second floor. For reference to the daily lives of the Hellenes, this building was used as the central hubbub for any shopping needs in the Athenian Agora. Now, however, the Stoa of Adalos is being used as a museum in order to display old artifacts that have been excavated from the grounds of the Athenian Agora.
As we explore the ancient empire of Rome, really one of the most iconic buildings is the Flavian Amphitheater. Popularly named the Colosseum, the arena towered over the southeast end of the Roman Forum. When we examine it, the building is truly a significant piece of how we view the Roman Empire at the time. As the Romans seized countless areas of land, daily life in Rome for the average citizen dramatically altered due to a strong urbanization movement. The Roman Empire has become so large, giving people more time for their own interests. With this in mind, people saw fighting as the ultimate entertainment, and as a result, the Colosseum was a place where criminals and professional fighters would fight animals to the death. While this could be seen as an innovation for the time, the true innovation comes from the intricate construction of the building and how well crowds could move in and out of the building.
To start off, the Colosseum was not the first building to be featured where it was constructed. It is actually a pretty remarkable story that comes before the Colosseum. In 64 CE, there was a fire that destroyed much of the Aventine and Palatine hills. Following the fire, Emperor Nero wanted to build a massive palace where the fire had happened. However, the citizens already angered that he did not respond to the fire fast enough, or that he even started the fire himself, were very resistant. In the end, though, he seized the aristocratic land and even carved into the Oppian hillside for part of his palace. Turning to architect Severus and engineer Celer, Nero's palace, named the Domus Aurea, featured 140 rooms with ceilings up to 11 meters tall, along with 30-meter tall bronze statue of Nero as a sun god. Along with this, a circular banquet hall, which rotated day and night, used water pressure to drive it, and he also had rooms with waterfalls running down the walls. As you can see, while his palace was used for self-pleasure, it truly was an innovation that, if he used correctly, could have been monumentous for the empire. In the end, though, Nero would later commit suicide and his building would be taken apart and would later be the site of the Colosseum, which uses the colossal side of his statue as the name for the building. Moving on to his successor, Vespasian, instead of building a pleasure palace for himself, he wanted to shore up his image by building one for the people. The Colosseum was able to hold 50,000 people, making it the largest amphitheater in the Roman world. However, with its size came careful planning to ensure stability. First, being built near a lake, it had to have drains to dispel water. Second, the foundation used concrete ranging from 13 to 42 feet. In doing this, the ground level was raised almost 23 feet, allowing for people to look up and fascinate about its size and see how strong the Romans truly were. Along with this, the Colosseum incorporates symmetry similar to the Pantheon. The Colosseum was meant to be constructed in a 5:3 ratio. Also, the perimeter of the building was to be split up evenly among 80 entrance arches. So with each being 20 feet wide, with an extra 3 feet due to deviation in Roman measurements, the Colosseum was 80 times 23 equaling 1,840 feet, and the arena was adjusted to 280 by 168, which is still the 5:3 ratio. Another interesting piece of mathematics was the width of the auditorium area, height of the external facade, and width of the arena area were equal. Overall, the Colosseum was carefully put together in the way the Romans thought were ideal. The building had 4 stories having superimposed arches with semicircular columns. On the first story there are Tuscan columns, the second had Ionic, and the third had Corinthian. The last one has pilasters with Corinthian capitals. The pilasters have windows that once held the masts for awnings to hang above. The Colosseum was dressed in bronze shields on top, along with statues of gods and emperors between the arches. In order for spectators to get to their seats, they followed arches labeled 1 through 76 to enter inside. There were 4 grand entrances not numbered for royalty and important people. Each floor had grand circular promenades decreasing in decoration as you went upward. Unlike the other floors, the first had marble flooring with stucco ceilings. As the other amphitheaters suggest, the seats had 40 centimeters of width with 70 centimeters of legroom, not the ideal amount of space nowadays. Each level was separated by entrances and staircases, along with marble and iron dividers. The top section even had a 5-meter high wall. Based upon status in society, one would sit in certain spots. Women and the poor would be at the very top, while the bottom 2 sections contained the high-class males of society. The seating arrangements were truly an innovation in how amphitheaters were set up and paved the way for future ones. As for the actual arena section, there were 15 centimeters of sand, sometimes dyed red to look like blood. There were trapdoors to allow animals to leap dramatically onto the floor, along with winches and capstans to pull the animals up onto the floor. Surprisingly, the first fight was a sea fight with 1 meter of water on the floor. This suggests that the basement for fighters and animals would be put in later.
As Priscus and Verus each lengthened the contest, and for a long time the battle was equal on each side, repeatedly loud shouts petitioned for the men to be released, but Titus followed his own law. It was a law to fight without shield until a finger was raised. He did what was allowed, often gave dishes and gifts, but an end was found to the equal division. Equals to fight equals to yield. Titus sent wooden swords to both and palms to both. Thus skillful courage received its prize. This took place under no prince except you, Caesar. When 2 fought, both were the victor.
In the end, the Colosseum was truly an innovation of entertainment and Roman culture, showing how powerful the empire was at the time and how different the building was from traditional Greek and Roman architecture.
When talking about the Trajan market, there's two guys we really need to know about, Trajan and Apollodorus of Damascus. Trajan was born in modern-day Spain and was most likely of mixed Hispanic-Italian descent. His original name was Marcus Ulpius Trajanus, but he became known as Trajan during his reign. Trajan's father was the first in his family to serve the Roman Empire, eventually becoming the ruler of Baetica, a region now known as Andalusia on Spain's southern rocky coast. As his father rose through the ranks of Roman hierarchy, so did he, and he spent much of his early life serving in various positions in Rome. After the Emperor Nerva passed away, Trajan assumed the throne. Trajan quickly earned the reputation of being a good emperor and was exceptionally popular with the Roman people. During his rule, so much so that they actually referred to him as Optimus Princeps, meaning first best citizen. The Forum of Trajan was constructed during his rule as a public space instead of his own private area. This is important because it highlights who Trajan was as an emperor, something of a man of the people. Now, Apollodorus of Damascus was the architect behind the Trajan market and Basilica Ulpia. He was a military engineer who worked under Trajan during the Dacian Wars and is notable for designing a bridge used to cross the Danube River. Some ancient accounts say that Apollodorus was executed by the Roman Emperor Hadrian, but scholars are unsure of whether or not this is actually true. Okay, so let's take a look at the work now.
Focus in on two parts of the work, the Trajan market and the Basilica Ulpia. Pictured right now is the Trajan market, which served as a marketplace in Imperial Rome and is often referred to as the world's oldest shopping mall. It was constructed between 107 and 110 Common Era. The market has 3 different levels and is built into the hillside behind it. These levels are connected by staircases which provide access to different corridors. The road at the top of the Trajan market was called the Via Biberatica, from the Latin root bibere, which means to drink, presumably for its stores which sold beverages. The stores in the market also sold many food items, including vegetables, fruit, wine, oil, and spices. As you can see in the picture, the stores lined the sides of the main corridor, providing a permeable storefront for the ancient Romans to get what they need. I would also like to point out the bricks. You can see here that buildings were made out of concrete faced with bricks, but during its time stucco would have likely covered the walls as well. If you look at the arches here, you can see brick pilasters, which are pillars protruding from the walls that support the sides of the arch. On the second level, the arches have bases and capitals made out of travertine limestone. You can see in the picture here that the main face of the complex was a curved horseshoe of storefronts. The complex included a covered market, storefronts, and, on the third floor, the equivalent of office buildings connected to the ceiling with buttresses. One of the unique features of the market's design is actually the ceiling itself, constructed out of groin vaults. A groin vault is just 2 intersecting barrel vaults, and this allows for a wide open area and the space to its sides to let in light into the market. Here's what the ceiling looked like. Now, the basilica was also located in the Forum of Trajan and was used as a civic building of sorts, in which business transactions and trials would take place. The main hall was lit by a clerestory and supported by a colonnade. The columns in the clerestory are of the Ionic order. The sides of the basilica are called apses, which are semicircular recesses ceilinged by domes. The front has 4 columns in the Corinthian order, making it a tetrastyle porch that support the facade above. Now, the facade is said to have once had a statue of a quadriga, or a 4-horse chariot, on its top. The lateral porches support individual bigas, or 2-horse chariots, at the top of their facades. The porch once bore the inscription Ex Manubis, or from the spoils of war. This is a monument to Trajan's military successes.
Now, the Basilica Ulpia set the standard for a proper and lavish Roman basilica, but today only exists in its ruins. Its legacy, however, exists in Christian architecture that constructed their own basilicas. Many consider the Basilica Ulpia the primary influence to many of these works and has remained significant through history because of this.